If we're going to be a family, we have to learn how to forgive and forget. Right, Libs?
You freak. Mom.
We are talking What Lies Below, and this one is written and directed by Brandon R. Dumoulin, and this one stars Emma Horvath as Liberty. You've also got Mina Suvari, who plays Michelle, her mother. And I would best describe this movie as humanoids from the deep, but a sexier version. A sexy humanoids from the deep, if you will. If you're familiar with that movie, you kind of maybe get the gist of where this film is going to go. But in case you haven't, let me try and give you a vague kind of plot synopsis here. So Liberty is a 16-year-old girl, and she's a bit of a science nerd. She's somewhat kind of reclusive, doesn't like socialising too much. She just come off summer camp, and she's picked up by her mother, played by Mina Suvari. And the mother kind of wants to kind of live somewhat vicariously through her daughter. And they seem to have a pretty good bond, and we get some kind of fleshing out of their relationship. But the mother has met this sexy new guy, and she's introduced this character, John, and you know, he is kind of everything a woman would dream of: hunky, sexy, charming, intelligent. He's got good, seems to like care for the environment, all of these things, like the perfect guy. And it's fair to say Liberty's somewhat attracted to him as well. And we kind of get this somewhat Lolita vibe kind of going on for a little bit. And it all seems hunky-dory initially. But then John, this guy, seems to act, let's just call it, somewhat inappropriately towards Liberty. And the alarm bells start to go. And it's not just kind of weird sexual things that he's doing. There may well be something otherworldly kind of going on here. And as the rest of the movie kind of progresses, you'll kind of learn more about what that is and the motivations behind what he's doing there. So all I'm going to say, but like I've said, if you've seen Humanoids from the Deep, that should give you an idea of where this movie is going. What do I think works? I think one thing this movie does is kind of flipping the tables a little bit on the kind of the stereotypes that we've seen in a lot of horror films where the sexualization is a lot of the time in the female characters. You know, we have the women kind of getting undressed and naked and bikinis and all of this, and it's the kind of for the male viewer to then kind of gaze upon and go, ooh. This one, I think it tries to flip the tables, and it's a lot about sexualizing this particular guy, where Liberty is basically undressing this guy with her eyes, and he's getting out the lake and she's checking out his lunchbox and all of this. And the camera definitely does that sort of lingering shots over this guy's body, very much like a lot of movies do with kind of like, the female characters. So I think the movie's trying to deliberately kind of turn the genre, or turn that particular trope on its head to say that this is kind of the same thing but the other way around. I will say that movie does come across, because of this, like, if a guy is particularly attractive, it doesn't matter what his flaws are, because that's the kind of, like, the only thing that really matters. I feel that's kind of like an unfortunate, maybe, side effect of how the movie kind of portrays that to a certain degree. But nonetheless, I like the kind of like the turning of the kind of the trope, so to speak. I like things that when they kind of do things a little differently. I gotta say, one of the big things for me was the portrayal of Liberty by the actress. I think she does a great job of. I think the character's going to be around 16, and the actress I think is around in her mid-20s. But she kind of looks the part. She's well cast, and I think she does a great job of portraying Liberty as someone who's kind of somewhat kind of quiet and reserved, but at the same time intelligent and independent. And I think she has a good character arc within the movie, and it's portrayed as to be, vulnerable, but still have that strength. And when push comes to shove, she'll kind of like man up, for lack of a better word. So I really liked her her portrayal. I also like the relationship that she has with Mina Suvari's mother character as well. I thought it seemed very genuine, and the kind of the way that they were interacting and stuff like that. And the movie's kind of like, it makes you think it's going to be somewhat of a kind of romantic love triangle to a certain degree, like, you know, typical these kind of sexual thrillers that you would have got in the kind of the 90s and stuff like that. Never quite goes that far. It, you know, then leads more into the sci-fi horror. And the sci-fi horror elements are somewhat Lovecraftian, I would suggest. So if you like kind of your Lovecraft, or this is, I would say, a comparable movie, although it's not, you know, strictly speaking, a Lovecraft adaptation or anything, but it has that feel, Lovecraftian cosmic horror, so to speak. It's never particularly overt in regards to seeing things on screen, in regards to special effects. Obviously, you know, a modest budget, but I think the movie, you know, it shows you kind of a few things here and there to kind of make things seem not quite right. I think the actor does a good job of kind of selling you this kind of charming but also quite intimidating sort of character. I think maybe the effects sometimes are a little wonky, to be honest. They use a little bit of kind of CGI enhancement to kind of make him look a little weird here and there, and it looks a little bit like CGI enhancements, to be honest with you. I feel the movie slows down a little bit in the middle, a little bit too much in the middle for me. I didn't feel like the movie progressed a lot plot-wise in that period of time, and I felt like it was treading water, excuse the pun there. Although I really enjoyed the kind of the twist at the end. That is pretty much right at the end, if I'm honest. But I actually thought that was quite a neat twist. Well, obviously not going to give that away. The movie is a little bit guilty of doing some very, very obvious foreshadowing. I was thinking, why the hell was this movie kind of always having like cans of Diet Cola in focus all the time? And remember this, because this is going to come into play later on in the movie. And I'll say this very obvious line of exposition that's going to explain something later on. So the movie is a little bit guilty of doing that. So you can argue maybe the movie plays it a little bit dumb sometimes and kind of really making it obvious. Remember this, audience, because this thing's going to... You need to remember this because it's going to come into play later on. And therefore, some of the dialogue seems a little clunky and a little bit unnatural because it's trying too hard to be obvious to set things up kind of later on. I do think there are some conveniences, and there are some, for example, there's a character that's introduced kind of late in the film, and I'm thinking, this has purely been introduced for canon fodder, so you don't care. You know, it's things like this, and I gotta say, I feel the movie does have more questions than answers, and there was, I don't want to spoil anything, but the one question I did have is that this is the women's house, but something happens at the end of the movie, and I was thinking, well, how is that the case? Because this is the woman's house. I don't know. Again, I can't spoil it for you. I think the ending will be somewhat divisive. I actually quite liked it, if I'm saying my personal opinion, but I can understand how people, having reviewed quite a few films, and some of them which end in a similar way, some of the feedback I've seen is somewhat negative towards those sort of things. So I can imagine the ending being somewhat divisive. Overall, I think this is a pretty good kind of lower budget, aquatic style horror movie. There's not a lot in the way of special effects. A lot of it is left to your imagination, for better or for worse. But in a way, I'd rather they did that than have really crappy effects and kind of show you stuff that maybe they can't afford to do. But to me, the strength of this movie, I think, led in the performances by our two female actors, really, who I think really sold it for me. So because of that, I will give this an above average mark, but not a massively over average. But I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think? Leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.